Welcome in to the PHNX Sun Devil Show, coming to you live from Studio K. Whoa, look at this amazing thing for the first time ever on the PHNX Sun Devil Show. Right now, you can head over to any Circle K location in Arizona where you can get any size Polar Pop or Foster for just 79 cents.
69 cents if you're an Inner Circle member.
If you're an Inner Circle member, but if you're not, that's okay. No, it's not okay. Become an Inner Circle member.
Right. You can still get it for cheap because that's how great Circle K is. They're going to give it to you on the cheap, whether you're part of the Inner Circle or not. But save that money, man.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you wouldn't.
How's everybody doing today? Happy Tuesday. I'm your host, Shane Diefenbach, here with Erik Ruby on this fine Tuesday in June, late June. We're getting into the heyday, the weird days of sports. The Stanley Cup final just wrapped up. So now all we're left with is baseball, some soccer, some WNBA, but no playoffs. So it's going to feel a little different. And we're getting into the era of this podcast where we just got to talk about stuff from the past. Aren't you guys excited?
Yeah, the past. Oh, yeah. I mean, but before we get into that, if you are listening on audio, make sure you rate us 5 stars.
Yes.
That's going to be great. But I would encourage you, come check out the new set because it looks really cool. We got Short Bus back in the chat, Sweet Prince Kenny as well. We're able to do cool stuff like this and revamping a studio, obviously because our friends at Circle K, because all of you guys listening and supporting and everything like that. So come take a look. It's really cool. And we'll be in here quite a bit. We got a picture of Kenny Dillingham in the background as well.
Shane's covering up my favorite part.
The picture of Scat.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a big head. Actually, I don't. I have a very small head.
Let me see.
Yeah, it's very small. For those listening on audio, I have a very small head.
A little smaller.
JJ in the chat mentioning major trigger warning needed for this episode, boys. Yes, there is. We're basically all of today we're fueled by Craig Morgan's article that he wrote at gophnx.com. If you haven't read that yet, you should. It just talks about how COVID and the 2020 shenanigans kind of set ASU back a pretty wide margin in all of ASU sports, and he details every single one. Talked to many people in the various departments, including Tim Healy, Mickey Mitchell, Charlie Turner-Thorne, tons of other people. Great story. So we're going to recap that and just kind of talk about it one by one, and starting with, of course, ASU football. Whew, this is your major trigger warning because we're going to talk about Herm Edwards, and some people might not like what I'm about to say, but if you don't agree with this, you're wrong. It started out pretty good, the Herm Edwards era.
It was like, now you look in retrospect, and after all the bullshit and the ramifications that came from all the bullshit, and you just can't help but have that sour taste in your mouth. But if you put that aside and you just look at what had happened up to that point, good recruits, good on-field success, and quite frankly, an upward trajectory. There was no reason to think that the train was going to go off the tracks. No. And then, of course, it did.
Yeah. Look, we'll start off with the first couple of years. In Herm's first year, they upset number 15 Michigan State, number 16 Utah, finished 7-6. Were in the top 25 for a week early in the season after that Michigan State upset, and things were looking pretty promising. And then the following year, they improved even further, starting 3-0 after upsetting number 18 Michigan State. Do you remember that game?
Dude,
I do remember. Field goal?
The missed field goal game was so crazy.
After the false start or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Was it false start? No, it was too many men, I think, right?
I think
it was 12 men on the field.
I think it was 12 men. I remember I was helping run the college radio broadcast for that game, and we were just all losing our minds.
Somebody fact check me in the stat.
Losing our minds.
Yeah, that was quite the game, quite the win at Michigan State in Lansing. Yes, that's where they play. And they also upset number 15 Cal and their signature win over number 6 Oregon. Before we talk about that Oregon game, I do want to talk about Cal. I just said some words that I don't think I ever thought I would say in football. They were number 15.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Can you name anybody on that team?
Oh my, didn't we do this like 3 months ago?
I don't know if it was number 15.
It was a Cal team.
It was a Cal team.
I don't know.
I think it might have been this Cal team.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
I think you named like the long snapper or some shit like that.
No, that was UCLA.
Okay, I was about to say you had a crazy pull.
Chase Garbers was their quarterback.
Okay.
So we remember him a little bit.
Oh
but
my gosh.
This is much like the West Virginia team that we talked about.
Oh.
Remember the West Virginia team that just ran the football?
Yeah.
Very similar to them. I don't know how this team was ranked so high.
15?
They went 8-5 that year. This was I think this was Wilcox's. No, it wasn't. Yeah, they went 8-5 that year. But only 4-5 in the pack. Just bizarre. They had no receiver over 500 yards or over 513 yards. Something named Nico Remigio had 513 yards. I genuinely don't know where their offense came from. Like it was bizarre. So that during the research of this, making sure I had all the facts correct, I saw that and I was like, number what? They were ranked what? And I couldn't name a player on that team. And I'm not really mad at myself that I couldn't name a player on that team because one of the weirdest teams I've ever seen.
You could have told me that year, if you asked me Cal's record, I could have told you like they got 3 wins. Yeah. 4 wins.
I have no idea how that team happened.
Not be the 15th ranked team in the nation at one point.
Yeah. That was wild. So yeah. And then of course, as I mentioned, this signature number 6, the win over number 6 Oregon, which at the time, like obviously so juiced. The Brandon Ayuk touchdown pass on 3rd and 17, just a signature win for ASU, and that was near the end of the year. I think it was the last regular season game of the year. Yeah, because they spoiled Oregon's chance to make the college football playoff, which was just the most Pac-12 thing to happen. Pac-12 after dark, cannibalizing themselves. Yeah. ASU middling, kind of going to this will get them to 8-4. It was just you had some hope.
It was hard not to believe in them. It was hard not to believe because I mean I've been very upfront in saying that when Herm Edwards got hired and he kind of did his little media tour, which included going to the school at the time that Cronkite where I was at and. Speaking and, telling people what his plans were for this program and everything like that. And it was so hard to not be bought in and to not believe in him. And I don't think I ever was like, Herm Edwards is a genius coach, but I'm like, this is the kind of guy that if you surround him with really smart on-field football, like coaching talent, why couldn't he galvanize a locker room, galvanize college kids and stuff like that? And to a certain extent, he really did.
Yeah, the pro system, the pro style, like not just offense, but the pro style program seemed to have been working.
I mean, and also if you think about it, obviously it's a roundabout, really convoluted way to get there. But think about the names on that team and think about how many of them are going to or are playing in the NFL.
Yep.
Like the promise was there and the path was there. And at this point, they were very clearly on it. And there was no reason to believe they were going to stray from it. And then, of course, that's where the whole COVID thing comes into play. And the only reason why all this went off the rails is because they started breaking the freaking rules.
Well, yeah, we'll get there in a second.
I'm sorry. It's just like...
It seemed like they were on a path to make this program what it should be again. And after the Todd Graham era, you hoped that, this gamble on Herm Edwards, who hadn't coached a football game since 2009 and knew nothing about college football, was somehow going to work. And again, the illusion was there. We thought it was, but things did go downhill. One thing I do want to mention: let's not forget the first 4 meetings against U of A. Herm Edwards did win, including a 19-point fourth quarter comeback, a 70-7 victory of the COVID year where they went 2-2. But of course, let's talk about when COVID hit in 2020. They played 4 games. They went 2-2. They almost beat USC. They finished with the 70-7 and then a win, I think, at Corvallis that year. And you kind of still had hope. Jaden was still here. And then it all went off the rails. After that season, the COVID recruiting violations hit. And again, they cheated, but they cheated during COVID. So that begs the question, if this whole thing doesn't happen, where is this program set? And this is a genuine question for chat. Like, would you rather have this had happened so the Herm era, Edwards could have gotten over with faster, or would you have liked to wait and see?
Well, right. I mean, listen, I think it's
does Herm cannibalize himself if this doesn't happen?
No,
Do they
I don't
lose
think so.
to Eastern Michigan if this doesn't happen?
No, I don't think so, because like we mentioned, they were on this kind of upward trajectory. And if there's one thing I think Herm Edwards probably would have been able to capitalize on, it's the upward trajectory, kind of the national attention and getting boosters and people behind him. And I know it's still hard for me to say that right now because of how it ended, but I'm truly trying to just go back to a place of where we were at.
Yeah.
And there was no reason to believe that if these extraordinary circumstances did not come into play, he would have been okay. Now, I don't know if we're still talking about him being the coach right now.
Yeah.
I think at a certain point, either A, he probably wouldn't want to do it anymore, or B, something would have happened. But there's no reason why boosters wouldn't be in on him, why he wouldn't be able to talk. And as far as I am aware of, and as far as what's out there, they were not breaking rules before the COVID stuff. At least everybody breaks rules. But you know what I mean?
I don't think they were getting caught.
I don't think they were doing anything to the level that nobody else is doing. Right? I think everybody's breaking a little bit of rules. Everybody's kind of skirting around it.
Yeah.
But this, when you get to a point where you're not just breaking the NCAA rules, but you're also endangering people, and you're breaking health protocols, and you're doing it at a time where it was so obvious that you were going to get caught if you were cheating because of everything going on in the world. I think it's safe to say if that didn't happen, it would be different. I'm not saying he'd still be here, but it would 1000% be different.
Yeah. Does that former staffer still report it if COVID isn't going on?
I don't think so.
I don't know what are they breaking in that case. I think there were enough people in this program that were going to do things their way, and not just the coaching staff. We know that Jaden Daniels' mom was involved after the reports. I mean, everything there was a lot of stuff surrounding this program that came to light when the investigation came out. And was it going to happen eventually? I don't know. But I do know that I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I think things are random. That being said, I think all of the events that transpired for us to get where we are inherently good now, because I believe in the person that's at the helm, and Kenny Dillingham. And it's easy to say that now. And again, one disclaimer I gave when the coaching search was going on after Herm Edwards, that in that offseason, I was very pro Kenny before they hired him. I take pride in being a guy who discovered a band before the band got popular. And that was and so I was very excited coming into this, but I also gave the warning, it's very easy to be excited right now. Just remember where you are now. If we're 5 years later, it doesn't work out, because that's the same thing that a lot of people are saying about Herm, that they were excited then, but they won't admit it. And I'm not saying Kenny's going to have that situation, but there's always reason to be cautious. I'm not cautious right now, but again, it's easy to say that now.
I'm not cautious because I have no fear, and I will so eat crow if this is wrong, pun intended. But I see no reality where Kenny Dillingham is going to try to cheat the system like that entire staff did during that time.
That's not what I'm pointing. I'm just saying if this whole thing doesn't work.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's so I'm not worried about that side of it. And then there's the football side of it as well, where Kenny's not coming in here and preaching a pro model and stuff like that. And I think in retrospect, looking at what Herm was preaching, it was always going to be somewhat temporary. Mm-hmm. I don't think that you can sustain a college football powerhouse from just the pro model. Now, there are the teams like the Alabamas and the Georgias where they get the best products, and so the best prospects turn into the NFL players. So you just kind of go one and the same. But at the end of the day, that's not really what they're preaching. They're preaching come here and dominate and then go to the next level, right? And so I think with Kenny, it's a much more sustainable, I want to build this program up. I want to build up locally, in Arizona. I want people to want to come here and to invest in these kids as people and not as assets. And looking at that now with NIL, I mean, there's no guarantee that once college football shifted, period, that Herm Edwards would even want to be a coach right now. Well, he could have been a part of the old guard that said, I'm done. And now you're looking for maybe a non-Kenny Dillingham to guide you through this era.
That was always a question, though, leading up to the Eastern Michigan loss before that even happened, was that is he going to be able to adapt in this era? And I don't know if he would have. As JJ mentions, is what we're talking about. The Herm era had an expiration date. And as Sharon mentions, it was clearly a toxic environment in the coaching staff with a bad culture. It would have imploded some way, just probably not as much as it did.
It would have been probably a slow decline, and then he steps away or gets fired, but probably steps away because Ray Anderson's probably still the athletic director.
Yeah, and so my final point on all of this is I think that, look, nothing in the last 4 years before Kenny, or nothing in the last 2 years before Kenny was really a good thing that happened. There were a lot of shady things going on, let's just call it like it is. The 2020 sucked for many reasons, and I'm not just talking ASU athletics. Like the events that led us to here were not very fun, and not very good to go through. But you come out on the other side, and I think that ASU came out a winner.
Yeah, I think ASU finds himself in a position with a coach that not only understands but embraces and runs headfirst into the new NIL landscape and college athletics landscape, but without being a money-hungry, I'm just going to try to pay my players to win type of coach. Yeah. They come away with somebody who has deeper ties to ASU, somebody who wants to be here and wants to invest in it and isn't just looking at it as a stop. And I'm not saying Herm didn't care, but like JJ said, like you've mentioned, like people listening are probably thinking, it just comes down to a certain point of he's going to want to not do this for a long time. And you've seen college coaches who've been doing it for a long time, like Nick Saban, step away. Yeah. And I would assume that a good part of that is this is a different sport than what they were in before.
Yeah, 100%.
And obviously, based off of the recruiting violations he had during the dead period, you can't trust him to adapt and to change. And with Kenny, you are armed with somebody who wants to be here, who is willing to adapt and change into the current landscape. And that is such an incredible football mind.
This guy right here.
That guy Kenny.
Yeah, and with all that being said, of course you'd rather have this didn't set you back 3-4 years. And of course you'd rather have a smoother transition into Kenny Dillingham from Herm Edwards. Like that would have been, that's the dream, but that's just not the case. And
I don't think you probably don't get Kenny because Kenny might've been swooped up somewhere else.
I think there's still a world where this team trips over themselves and Herm gets fired in 2022 and the coaching search still lines up perfectly, and Kenny did want to be here. So I think you'd rather the COVID violations and the recruiting restrictions not have been a part of ASU's past, but they are. And I think they came out a winner with the
as much as you could,
as much as you can. Yes.
And I mean, if you think about it, man, like if we talk about an alternate reality where the transition from Herm to Kenny is smooth, and we saw what Kenny did in the first year and how he's kind of following up on that.
Yeah, just imagine what this team could be now.
Yeah, imagine what he could have had after an offseason of five wins maybe first year instead of 3. And there's a little bit of disagreement in the chat, healthy disagreement between our diehards. But talking about would Herm have been able to successfully adapt to the modern NIL, Sharon saying he thinks he would have epically failed in this era. Sweet Prince Kenny saying that he has deep connections to people with money. Now, I think it's one of those things where like the first year or so, Herm would have been like, I can do this. And then I think it would have just been so much where he's like, I just didn't get into this. And not saying that he would fail, but I don't think he would want to be around and do it for a long time. So I think it falls somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a good point. I think we're good on ASU football for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a rabbit hole of what ifs and what could change. You know, that you could probably go on for a very long time. But I think you can disagree. But I think it's safe to say that the Herm experiment was going well.
Yeah,
and it's not out of the realm of possibility that if the COVID never happened, it might have continued that upward trajectory.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have, but it's definitely not
for another year or so.
Yeah, you know what's got an upwards trajectory?
Please tell me.
My happiness when I'm walking into Illegal Pete's doors, brother. Their margaritas are fantastic. Their food is unbelievable. I want more and more every single time. And their queso is the best. I've told you about the texture of it. It's similar to like a really good mac and cheese sauce. Yeah. It's the best. I love Illegal Pete's queso, and I just love Illegal Pete's in general. And they're here to bring you a win with their legendary sound check deal. You can bring in your ticket stub from any ticketed event and get a draft beer or house margarita for a penny. Illegal Pete's wants to celebrate with you, whether it's pre or post games. They got you covered on all your game day needs. You got to purchase an adult entry to redeem the Illegal Pete Soundcheck deal, though. But of course, you're getting an entree if you're there. like a dumb.
Why would you go to Illegal Pizza and not get their amazing food?
Yeah, unless you had just eaten and you want like a post.
I mean, yeah, if you want to go for a drink, I mean, listen, you can go and you can be perfectly satisfied with a margarita or a nice custom cocktail.
I can get a water there and I'll be juiced because of just the vibes.
If you have a choice between eating there and not eating there, you need to choose to eat there.
Yeah, and Illegal Pizza is your go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beer, not COVID violations.
No. Speaking of buddies, one of my buddies, Sweet Prince Kenny, says, of course, Erik doesn't agree with me. Whatever, LOL. 2 things I've never seen. Turtles being fast and Erik being correct.
Wow.
A, rude. B.
Damn, Sweet Prince Kenny.
B, I didn't disagree. I agree with both of you. I think that he would have been good at it, but then I think he would have gotten sick of it. That was me agreeing with you and then also saying with Sharon, I think he would have flamed out. And Short Press asked if I can even read comments without glasses. Come on, guys.
Yeah, what's going on?
What's going on?
I'm sorry, man.
Yes. First of all, I'm wearing contacts. I actually used to wear contacts all the time. And I rocked with the glasses for a bit. Now I'm back on contacts. But anyway, Sweet Prince Kenny says I've never been correct. And I can tell you that is factually incorrect because I've talked about Circle K and how amazing they are. And there's absolutely no debating that. Obviously, we are in Studio K here. Wonderful people at Circle K help set all of this up. But they don't want to just help us build a studio. They want to help us save money. They want to help you save money with their Inner Circle membership. America's Thirst Shop is not just a place to fill up with yourself, but also your car. And you can get 25 cents off per gallon for your first 5 fill-ups. Then that moves to 3 cents off per gallon every day. And if you go enough times, you get upgraded to the Inner Circle and get 5 cents off per gallon every single day. Now, I'm lucky to not have a crazy commute, but there are a lot of people in this office that do, including you.
It's not crazy,
but it's a longer commute. It's a longer commute, and the people at Circle K have probably saved everybody in this building collective hundreds, maybe close to thousands of dollars, and only going up. Plus, they got deals on nice drinks and snacks and everything, including their Polar Pop or Froster, any size, just 79 cents or 69 cents. If you are part of the Inner Circle, all you got to do is go to the app, download it today. It is free. Sign up for the Inner Circle and go to offers and find everything waiting for you. Go to circlek.com for more details.
The ASU Football Inner Circle, it was a toxic one with some bad seeds. Circle K's Inner Circle is elite.
Beautiful. And we have a question from a Wildcat in the chat. Being genuine, which I like. It's a nice change of pace. As a Wildcat fan, can you explain your recruiting violations? Not trolling, just genuinely curious.
Yeah, I mean, so basically what was happening was it was found that an anonymous staffer sent a package to ASU's athletic department with receipts and proof that they were contacting and paying for recruits' flights and amongst other things during the COVID dead period when you weren't allowed to contact or just be in contact with recruits in general. And that was the meat of it. There were many other things and things that still haven't come out yet, but that was most of it. I love Will's comment saying Herm would have delegated those duties talking about the NIL. Just like he did with recruiting, he wouldn't have done anything.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Anyway, moving on to ASU basketball, one that hurts me so bad because this era of Bobby Hurley at ASU basketball was so amazing. And we're going to talk about some of the best moments between those 2018 to 2020 seasons. Let's talk about the thing that sucked the most, though, was the NCAA tournament being canceled. Do you remember where you were on the day where the Rudy Gobert Mike touch day and then everything shut down?
I do. I was at my dad's a pastor, and they had this event in this church where like people were just coming and like getting food or whatever, and we were all kind of like sitting there and kind of spaced out a little bit because you're a little bit freaked out. And I pulled out my phone and I'm like, they shut the NBA down. And I remember everybody looked at me like, what? And that was just a day where you knew it was like, okay, this is getting serious.
I was on spring break. I was in California with one of my best friends, and we'd actually gone to Universal Studios the day before everything shut down. Somehow didn't get COVID from that. Touching handrails and everything. It was insane.
You're just built different.
Yeah, just built different. And I remember I was staying at a buddy of mine's place in LA, and he had just taken a nap. And he woke up and I was like, have you seen what has just happened?
Waking up from a nap.
He was like asleep for 3 hours. And in those 3 hours, the NCAA tournament got canceled. The NBA shut down. Everything happened. And he was like, what are you talking about? It was quite literally the most rude awakening you could have. And oh man, yeah, I remember when that happened, and the first thing I thought of was this Bobby Hurley led team and how they were 20-11 and about to go to the conference tournament, and were on the brink of their third straight NCAA tournament bid, which would have been the first time since the early 1960s for an ASU basketball team to do. So if you think that Bobby Hurley doesn't know what he's doing, you're wrong, and I still think they're feeling the effects of that. Danielle,
I think the important distinction here is that that team wasn't going in like the first four.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like that was a straight up NCAA tournament team.
Yeah, they were going to be, I think, probably a 9 seed, but they were going to be a dangerous 9 seed.
Yeah.
JJ saying, please teleport me to our Studio K brothers. I think that 2018-2019 was the best complete team in the Hurley era, but man, this 2019-2020 team was something.
JJ with some good context with all the other like good teams as well. Like 2020, they had won 9 of 10.
So yeah, I'm about to get to that.
Yeah.
So in the 2020 or 2019-2020 season, at the end of the 2020 season, going into to conference tournament play, before that, late January through late February, they won 9 of 10, including the win against U of A, where Alonzo Verge had the layup with 10 seconds to go. They were down 22 at one point in that game, and won that. And that sparked that 9 of 10, beating some really good, tough conference opponents, going into, again, the conference tournament. They had dropped 3, but they were against tough opponents. I think it was UCLA, USC, and Washington, I want to say. But then they had a win going into the conference tournament. So everything was looking like it was shaping up to be a really dangerous team. And then everything shut down. And again, like I can't stress the fact enough, like this was going to be Bobby's 3rd straight NCAA tournament berth, which probably the most dangerous team that he's ever had going into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, there's one thing we know about the NCAA tournament. The high seeds win all the time, and it's always chalk. And no, like seriously, there was a chance with this team. And if you look at a program like NC State from just this year, right, what it can do to kind of help catapult a program into that next level of constantly competing and getting like national eyes for a national name like Bobby Hurley. I mean, we're talking like if they go into this tournament as a 9 or as a 10 seed and they make a deep run, if we're playing the what if game here, who's to say the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years they're not a perennial tournament team, not a first four in, right? And they're a team that continues to be dangerous. I mean, if you look at it now, the same way with football, where it's like, okay, you still end up in a place where you're good. You have 2 5-stars. You have a really good transfer class and a 4-star as well to pair with your 5 stars. Who's to say that process doesn't get sped up a little bit if you don't have the rug pulled out from underneath you right before you're posed to go on a run on a national stage? Now, you never know, and you could be just idealizing something that wouldn't have happened. But I think the reality is like it could have. And it's not a far stretch to see that team winning at least a couple games in the tournament.
Yeah, there's a world out there. There's an alternate reality where that team gets to the Sweet 16, and you don't know what happens after that. If COVID never happens and this team makes a deep run in the tournament in 2020, you had his best recruiting class coming in the next year in 2020 to 2021, and even in this reality where the tournament got canceled, you could say, okay, look, sports are going to resume in November. They're going to play basketball, though restricted with guidelines and such. And you have the best recruiting. You have Josh Christopher coming in, the highest rated recruit you've ever had. You have Marcus Bagley coming in. You have some returners. You were ranked number 18 in the preseason poll. You think you can really get stuff going. And then the wheels kind of fell off of that team. And Mickey Mitchell says in the article a really good point that I didn't really think of that much. The guidelines really restricted Bobby because of how much emotion he coaches with, how personal it is to him, and he couldn't sit next to players on the bench and talk to them. He had to coach with a mask on. Like that does a lot. Like that restricted you a lot. And I think maybe if these guidelines weren't in place because the COVID never happened, that might be a different team. He might get more of Josh Christopher. He might get more of the team. Marcus Bagley might not disappear. Things can be different.
And it in this article from Craig, you said Hurley not being Hurley created its own issues, among them the loss of key players such as Romello White, who transferred to Mississippi, and Hurley kind of Mississippi State. But he mentions that, like, you're not having your normal way to communicate with people. And not just in this specific situation, but at that time, the world basically went through a communication crisis where everything had to change, whether you are no longer speaking face to face, it's mainly through text, or whether when you are seeing people, like if we're having a conversation right here, me and you, it's a lot different than if we're having a conversation on opposite sides of the room.
And I can't see your facial features.
Right. And
I don't know what you're conveying to me.
And Bobby, like you said, a very emotional person, somebody who wears his heart on his sleeve.
On his face.
And on his face. and somebody where he is very good at galvanizing his players.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned, and like you mentioned specifically, like, yes, there was a lot of turnover on this roster throughout the last couple of years.
Yep.
It was not because players don't like playing for Bobby Hurley. There was a lot of other circumstances. And I think part of that was, I really liked playing for Bobby Hurley when he could be fully Bobby Hurley. But even Bobby himself admits that that's not what he could have done. And that just handicaps somebody who was so reliant on the emotional connection with his players. And it puts you in a place where you probably don't even realize it in the moment, because you're just in survival mode. You're in, let me get through this. Let me make the most of it. But now that you're on the other side of it and you're looking at what it was, you start thinking about, well, what it could have been if I didn't have to adhere to those different sets of circumstances and those restrictions, you know? And especially coming off, again, your momentum being killed from the season before. And having returners, it wasn't just you have a top 10 recruiting class coming in with your best recruit of all time. You've got really good players coming back as well. And not having that momentum to end the season, it rolls into the next one, whether you want to admit it or not. Like, that all plays a role. It's all linked together more than I think people would like to admit. Yeah.
I mean, I remember the start of that game, or the start of that season, in the Mohegan Sun tournament they played in, when they played Rhode Island and beat them in a close game with Josh Christopher having a really good game. You're like, oh my God, this team can be really good. And then they competed a little bit with Villanova that next game. And then, the wheels kind of fell off a little bit there. But you finish 11-14. You don't make the tournament. You get blown out in the Pac-12 tournament to Oregon. And then, you lose a lot of momentum. And then the NIL and transfer portal gets crazy and you're already behind. Again, like, if this program had kept the momentum from 2020 going into 2021 and had a great season under what should have been one of Bobby Hurley's best teams, things are probably different nowadays. But you look at what he's done since then. He has the number 4 recruiting class in the nation. Right. He didn't sit back. Woe is me. He didn't pout. He changed and he adapted. And that's something we touched on yesterday. That's something we touched on Friday. Like, it's a big thing that your head coach, has weathered this storm, and it looks like you're sailing out the other side and you see clear skies and you're ready to go.
I mean, it's a massive, massive kudos to Bobby. And again, it makes you think, well, what if he didn't have that to overcome? Yeah, because not only is that great for your on-court product if you end up making it the tournament, let's say you win a game or two, right? You just keep that momentum going. Then you come back, you have more financial investment, even though you're not in the NIL era fully yet. Maybe you're looking at better facilities. Yeah. Maybe you're looking at better ways to take care of your players, right? Oh, now we have top players coming in. Let's capitalize on that a little bit more than how we did. Now you're entering the NIL era with way more people ready to line your pockets and help you out, right? Yep. And possibly even a Bobby Hurley who he's always trying his best, but even admitted that moving to the Big 12 and having so much change kind of reinvigorated him. Well, maybe he would have stayed like on that top level that we know Bobby could hit right off the bat, throwing his name around for NIL, and now you're entering this era ahead of it instead of adjusting. And you have to give the congratulations and the kudos to adjusting and figuring out what to do. But at the end of the day, if he didn't have to do that and he was already on top of it, you're talking about getting a head start for somebody that we have seen already pull in an incredible recruiting class in very tough circumstances. Yeah,
it should be really exciting going into this year. As he mentioned in one of Craig's other articles, he feels rejuvenated. It feels like a new start, fresh start, and what better time than right now to be bought into ASU basketball going into the Big 12, because that not only does that bring better competition, it also brings more eyes, which means more money, which means a better roster consistently. And I think you're going to expect bigger and better things year after year for ASU basketball. And I think that starts this year. So it's exciting. Again, you'd never know where we'd be right now if that never happened, because there was a ton of momentum and it got killed, but they're ahead of what ASU football is on, and they fast tracked it a little bit.
Absolutely. I think part of that is just Bobby's been around a little bit longer and has that connections. Plus in basketball, the roster is smaller.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier if you
Definitely.
get a couple big.
We've seen how quick the turnover can be.
Get a couple big players and you're good. And there's no bigger player in the state of Arizona, the Desert Financial Credit Union,
talk about
right?
mainstays. You talk about
absolutely.
You talk about turnover. There's no turnover with Desert Financial Credit Union. They're the official retail banking partner of Arizona State, DFCU, DFA. I'm excited for basketball to start again, man. Look to Desert Financial for all of your checking and savings accounts, mortgages, loans, credit cards, investment options, and a ton more. And if you're an Arizona sports fan, there's no better place to do your banking than DFCU. It's the only place you can show your team spirit every time you make a purchase with their exclusive debit cards branded with your favorite teams. My debit card currently just has a galaxy on it.
That's pretty
cool. But I might have to upgrade.
That's pretty fitting. You seem like a galaxy
I'm a space guy. Big space guy. If I could pick a spirit animal, it would probably be a space wolf. And yeah, if you can,
that was maybe the most Napoleon Dynamite line.
If you can pick a spirit DFC or a spirit debit card, it would be DFCU's Arizona State University Visa debit card. And now's your time to show ASU's team spirit by opening a free checking account online and getting your $200 plus your choice of 3 ASU Visa debit cards. Go to desertfinancial.com/ASU to get started today.
And I know we want everybody to rock those ASU cards, but if you are a Cardinals fan or if you just like maybe some desert landscapes, they also have those options. The most important thing is just Desert Financial Credit. Yeah. That's the main game, that $200. Yeah. That's super important. And listen, this episode, they could bring back, lots of bad memories, right? And we're talking about, hey, I think we're keeping a positive spin on what could have happened and look at where we are now, but you go back to that time period, maybe it's a little bit stressful. And if you just want to relax a little bit, you want to forget all the stressors in your life, I would love if you checked out our friends over at OGs. Because right now, OGs have launched their 2 new products, which you've heard about for a little bit of time, the OGs Naturals.
I don't know if we can call them new.
I know. It's like they're their newest products, but they've been around.
They might be new to people that are here.
Yeah. So if you want a nice edible experience, something that tastes great, something that makes you feel great, but you don't like the gelatin part of it coming from animals, well, they have an OG's Naturals, a vegan gummy. They also have the big OGs for those of you that maybe partake a little bit more often and need a bigger punch in your gummy. They have that for you as well. They have delicious flavors, guys. They've got different combinations of, CBD and THC. They've got sleep gummies. They've got mini gummies. They even have unmedicated samples, which just taste good because OGs just taste good, plain period. They don't taste like those edibles from the back in the day that they taste like weed and you're like, oh, I'm just going to get through this. What? No, these.
Do you ever make firecrackers?
No, I haven't made firecrackers.
I think I've talked about this on the show. Finish the ad read and we can talk about
that. Yeah. I have made some from home, and they do not taste nearly as good as OGs. To learn more about OGs gummies and where you can find them, head on over to ogsbrands.com. Remember, you must be 21 or over to enjoy it responsibly. 21 or over to all the children in the chat right now. 21 or over.
So this is what it is. It was one of the weirdest things you could ever make from like an edible form. The easiest thing to make, literally just graham cracker, peanut butter, and you sprinkle weed on it.
Oh no, I've done that.
Yeah. Those get you right, but you can make it a lot easier and it tastes a lot better with our friends.
Tastes a lot better
with our friends over at OGs, because you're just eating weed at that point. You're making
pretty much.
Anyway, let's get into some of the other programs. Somebody in the chat, if you want to scroll up for a second, Danielle mentioned it. Yeah, Richard Martinez mentioned it about ASU softball and ASU baseball both being on a roll. We'll get to those in a second, but first, we'll talk about ASU women's basketball, who probably had the biggest loss, and that was Charlie Turner-Thorne retiring in 2022, which maybe wasn't a direct impact of 2020, but I think it kind of is, because in 2020 they were number 25 going into the tournament after upsetting number 2 and number 3 that year, Oregon and Oregon State. And then the tournament got canceled, and they just hit a storm of bad luck after that. 2021 didn't go the way, or 2021 didn't go the way they wanted to, and then injury riddled 2021, 2022, and then Charlie Turner-Thorne retired, and she was the greatest coach in ASU history, for maybe any sport.
Yeah, even if you don't think that COVID directly led to, her resigning and the end of her career here at ASU, you were still robbed of the final years of, again, you can't argue, and I would argue, the greatest coach in ASU history.
Yeah.
Just as far as longevity goes, as consistent success goes, and just a mainstay and a powerhouse name in the state of Arizona, especially in the basketball world. You missed out on a good team. You missed out on a good coach. And again, everything that we've mentioned with every single program is momentum. And momentum, when it just gets snuffed, it's so hard to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this even proves with the great coaches, like, sometimes things are out of your control, and there's only so much that you can do. And that's the position that Charlie Turner-Thorne was in with ASU women's basketball.
Yeah. And also, as Richard mentions, ASU softball 22-7 going into conference play. They had the number one in a lot of categories in the Pac-12. They scored the most runs. They had the most home runs. They had the most extra base hits, but also their pitching staff was elite. They lost a ton of momentum. And then obviously we know what's happened recently, and we can only hope they can get back to their winning ways with Megan Bartlett, but it's tough.
I mean, Totri and I did an episode while you were on vacation, just talking about the state of ASU women's basketball, the state of softball as well, and what they need to do to get back on track to where they were even before COVID as well. And I would highly recommend going back and listening to that for some more in-depth conversation on this. But it's really hard to see these programs that were just elite. I mean, ASU softball was a movement.
Yeah.
ASU women's basketball was, again, led by one of the most iconic names in the sport locally, right? And had the success to back it up as well. And I don't think people understand how important that is to the overall culture and infrastructure of athletics, to have these programs be so good and be at the top of their sport. And obviously they weren't the one seeds, but to be competitive and to be there as well. And losing that, it's left a little bit of a void.
Yeah, for sure. The some of my favorite moments covering ASU was that 2021 season, 2022 with Trisha Ford, or 2021 season with Trisha Ford at the helm, when they were very hot. And again, you hope to get back to those winning ways, but the momentum stopper in 2020 certainly didn't help them, and it certainly didn't help ASU baseball, who was ranked top 10 in basically every media poll, 13-4, and then COVID happened and everything kind of went down from there. They missed the tournament for the third straight year this year, which is the first time since 1959 to 1963. That year, they also were led by Spencer Torkelson. They were on track to do some really special things, and COVID really hurt them, and they're still feeling effects of that today. And again, you hope Willie can be the right guy for this job, but he was kind of given a bad hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think it's one of those, I don't want to be a broken record here, but I mean, you're talking about a team that, could have gone to Omaha and really made a lot of noise and potentially with some high-end talent, won the whole damn thing. And I think it was a little unfair that Smith got let go. I like Willie, and I'm really hoping for Willie to have all the success in the world. But it's hard to, as a coach, go through all the changes and circumstances that COVID brought and to still have a winning record.
Yeah.
And, but again, ASU baseball, and Craig mentions this in the article, has the highest expectations out of pretty much any of the teams that we've already talked about. And there were a lot of fans who were not happy with the state of the program. And I just don't think, again, in that moment, people realized just how much bigger than that specific sport and that specific season, the obstacles that the coaches and the players had to overcome.
Yeah, definitely. Save the best for last, the craziest story for last, and that was ASU hockey. They got it the worst, I would say. So when COVID arrived, they were they were in a middling era with their conference. They didn't have a conference, and all conferences decided that they were going to play within themselves in college hockey. So what does that mean for ASU? They had to go find an alternative. And what was that alternative? Playing all away games in 2020 to 2021.
That's awful.
All on the road in the Big Ten. Not even on the West Coast, not even on the East Coast. You're just in the Midwest, just grinding hockey, no access to your practice facilities. And this came after 2019 and 2020, where they beat number 4 Denver, they beat number 8 Clarkson, they swept Quinnipiac, who was number 9, and for the second straight year, Powers was up for the nation's best coach award. Like, yeah, they really got it bad, and Powers even admitted that the 2020-21 season and the ones that followed, that when the COVID protocols were in effect, had a really bad effect, a stalling effect, as he said, on the program.
Yeah, I think this quote, and it's the very last thing in Craig's article, which again, there's so much more meat on the bone. Go to PHNX.com, read that. If you don't like the ads, become a diehard. A lot more to come with that as well. But this quote from Power says, "It was just a really odd 2-year period. You just never felt like you could really settle in and make things feel normal because of all the issues we were facing with that. And then the move into our new arena. I don't want to say that the kids who came back for that 5th year resented it, but it's tough when you see a beautiful new arena going up and you know you're never going to play in it despite the fact that you helped build it and build the program. I can make a lot of arguments as to why COVID stunted our growth more than anybody because of what we had to go through." End quote. And that paints that picture beautifully, but I think it also really reignites and shows like, hey, Powers has done an incredible job leading through this. Yeah. And just like, with football and with basketball, they're out on the other end of this and they're up. Yeah. Right. And they made it through. And that is the most important lesson here, is that at the helm with hockey, you have somebody who was able to get through that rough period, and now that they don't have to deal with that, are getting incredibly high-ranked recruits. Like, it's nice to see them on the other side and successful.
Yeah, this should be a really fun year for ASU hockey. Obviously, entering the NCHC, the SEC of college hockey. They got some great opponents. They're playing Michigan. It's going to be a really fun time. So make sure to follow along here for all of the coverage, because we're going to be covering a ton of ASU hockey. And speaking of hockey, if you like my shirt, some big Coyotes news dropped last night. I don't know if you missed that. But yeah, if you want that shirt, this shirt, or any of our other shirts, go to PHNX.com, PHNXlocker.com. And become a diehard. You can get it for free. Whoa. One shirt or any piece of clothing item for free a year, including our dad hats. I had to order a new dad hat because I wore mine so much in the 3 years that I've been here. That it just came in with my Maserati Marv shirt, which is so fire. And if you want any of that, PHNXlocker.com. Tons of good stuff over there, and tons of good stuff on our website at GoPHNX.com. Exclusive diehard only content. You get access to the diehard Discord, which is the best place to be. Absolutely. And as I mentioned, you get a free t-shirt of your choice from the locker every single year. You're a diehard, and you get a special shout out. Like, shout out Sharon, shout out Donald.
Short Bus was in here earlier.
And welcome back.
Yeah. I think that's really something that maybe a good final closing note for this episode when it comes to the Discord and everything. Listen, sports can be hard sometimes, and there can be some stuff that's really hard to get through. And obviously, hopefully nothing like 2019, 2020 happens again. But it's really important to have a positive space to go in and to communicate with. And our diehard Discord goes beyond just ASU. We have Isabella, who is Sharon's daughter. We're supporting her through some medical stuff that she has been going through as well. Short Bus has been going through some stuff, and he was away for a bit. He comes back, open arms, like, hey, man, we'll always be here from you. I know Donald as well. Like, there are genuine people in there who care. And that's a massive difference than on social media. And it's not just ASU, but you have Suns, Cardinals, Diamondbacks, Rising, U of A. Really everything. And I would highly encourage, there's no place like it in the sports world. So I would highly encourage you to become a diehard just for that reason alone, let alone everything else that comes along with it.
Yeah. And that will put a bow on today's show. The closing, the moral of the story for today's show, if you will, is, looking back on these tough times aren't the most fun, but you get to also look at where you are now compared to that. Yeah. And it's a good thing to reflect on the growth of these programs and how fast some of them have overcome the trials and tribulations that came with 2020. And yeah, should be exciting. There's some really exciting stuff to look forward to with ASU Athletics, and there's always stuff to look forward to on our Twitter at PHNX_ Sun Devils. You can follow Erik on Twitter at Erik Ruby. That's Erik with a K. You can follow Danielle across all socials at Abraca Danielle, and you can follow me on Twitter at Shane Deef. Just being here for ASU fans as always, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. I think we got a special guest for you guys tomorrow, so keep an eye on our PHNX Sun Devils Twitter. But until then, go Devils and peace.
We all silly like the mayor.